I played every Injustice game. Here's my thoughts. Injustice is a series of video games created by NetherRealm Studios, the same developer behind the Mortal Kombat series. While Injustice shares a lot of DNA with Mortal Kombat, its big distinction is that the focus is solely on DC superheroes like Batman and Superman. Oh, and just to get ahead of the comments, I will be covering 5 total games in this video, don't worry. First though, I want to give a special shout out to my patrons, including Melancholis in the Omega Gamer tier, and that's just Ash and Han Solo, Megan, Cup in the Played Every Game tier. Thank you so much for your support. And before we move on, I want to share with you this video's sponsor, Skillshare. So, I am completely self-taught in everything that I've had to learn for this channel. In fact, I try to do something new in every video just to more deeply understand how to use the tools at my disposal. And you know what? One of the best resources for learning valuable skills like that is Skillshare. Take a look at this. I've been really focused on specifically improving my time management and video editing skills. And there's so many great classes here that can help me do just that, like Ali Bartlett's 9 Premiere Pro Hacks class, which is a really neat and incredibly informative class that showed me a lot of things that I didn't even realize I could do. Then I went straight into another class by Ali Bartlett called 10 Things You Probably Didn't Know You Could Do in Premiere Pro, which had a ton of really cool tips that I will definitely use going forward, like this cool text mask effect. What about time management? Kevin Siskar's class called Finding Your Flow for Maximal Productivity is excellent, and one of the big things that I personally took away from it was the steps he laid out to basically create a plan to keep myself in a positive and productive flow. Skillshare doesn't just offer classes on stuff like video editing or techie related stuff either. In fact, they offer so much more, like classes on business, marketing, and even music. There's so much to explore here. Remember, your goals can be achieved, and one of the best ways to do it is to start off small, like learning how to manage time more effectively or build your brand. This is a great way to get the ball rolling and learn the skills that you can take with you forever. Listen, I know you will achieve your goals, and Skillshare is an excellent resource to help you do it. I highly recommend Skillshare, and if you want to check it out, the first 1,000 people to use my link will get a free 1-month trial of Skillshare. Check it out in the description below. Thank you, Skillshare, for sponsoring this video. Alright, let's get into the games. Injustice: Gods Among Us was released in 2013 for 7th generation consoles, with a newer Ultimate Edition coming to newer consoles later that year. Visually, this game goes for a very muted and dark style, which fits the time this game was released, the developer NetherRealm's general style, and the general tone that a lot of DC stuff has gone for in the past. As far as fidelity goes, it looks fine, albeit a little dated, especially when you look at stuff like Green Lantern's victory animation, where the other lanterns are just floating images. In motion though, I'd say this game still looks great today, and the art style is what really shines more than anything. Additionally, the menus and overall presentation are pretty good. Everything feels snappy, and I enjoy the slow cinematic panning shots of the characters in the background of the main menu. I think the only menu here that I'm not a fan of is probably the character select. Something about it just feels awkward, I guess. Maybe I'm just used to perfectly square character buttons and not this vertical slice look they're going for. Nothing's wrong with it or anything, I'm just personally not a fan of the aesthetic. The gameplay in this game is a few different systems bundled into a pretty solid fighting game. For starters, there's technically only 1 round per fight, but each character has 2 health bars. When either character's health bar is depleted, there's a quick pause and then there's a little reset and the fight continues. It's sort of like a rounds system, but this can happen multiple times since both characters have 2 health bars. Once the second health bar is depleted, of course, the match is over. In the battles, you have your standard light, medium, and heavy attacks that can be modified into specials using direction combinations. You can move left, right, jump, and change your stance. Hitting the B or circle button uses your character's special ability. Some abilities are temporary stat boosts, while others are active abilities, like Batman's Batarang attack. It seems like most of them are just stat boosts, though. On every stage, there are interactive elements that can be triggered by standing near them. These can be background stage elements or things on the edges of the screen. Most of them deal damage, but some of them allow you to make fast movement adjustments to get you out of a tight spot. Speaking of stages, there's also stage transitions that can be triggered by using a specific attack on the opponent while they're near the edge of the stage. These transitions are really cool and super fun to watch, and a lot of them are really creative. Of course, they also deal a bunch of damage too. At the bottom of the screen, there's a special meter that builds up over time as you deal and take damage. This meter can be used for more than just ultimate moves though. The first use of this meter is a mechanic called meter burn, which allows you to make your normal attacks slightly stronger or give you an extra advantage during a normal attack at the cost of 1 slice of this meter. Another mechanic that uses the meter is the clash wager mechanic, where if a player's lost at least 1 health bar, they can initiate a clash during either their your own combo or while an opponent is attacking. When a clash is initiated, you have the option to wager as much of your special meter as you want. During these clashes, by the way, you can actually get some character-specific dialogue depending on the matchup, which is really awesome, and one of my favorite things about the clashes. Anyways, whoever wagers more wins the clash and either deals damage to the opponent or regains HP depending on how the clash was initiated. If you can't win the clash, it's still worth using some of your meter just to minimize the amount of damage or HP regained. This is actually a great way of recovering HP after an opponent uses an ultimate move on you too. And when I was playing the story mode, it looked like the AI would use this a lot. Speaking of ultimate moves, they can be used by pressing both triggers with a full special meter. If the opponent fails to block or dodge the move, there's an entire animation played out for the special that deals a ton of damage. Now let me just say, I really like these. Almost every character gets a ridiculously cool and creative animation, and they weren't afraid to make some of these wild. My personal favorite in this game is probably the Flash's, as he literally runs around the planet to punch his opponent. Of course, some ultimate moves are cooler than others, but I can't really complain when some of these characters don't have literal superpowers. The gameplay in this game is, in my opinion, incredibly solid. I'm honestly not that great at this game or even this type of game, at least mechanically, but I still had a lot of fun with this game's systems. I think they struck gold with a nice balance of special systems without making it feel bloated. I do kind of wish they added some kind of option to shorten the ultimate ability scenes though, because while they are really cool, they can get kind of repetitive after a while. Alright, on to the modes. In the single player menu, there's story, battles, star labs, single fight, and training. The single fight and training modes are exactly what they sound like, so let's just go to the story mode. The gist of the story is this. In an alternate universe, the Joker detonates a nuclear bomb in the heart of Metropolis, leaving the city in ruins. At the same time, he manages to trick Superman into killing Lois Lane and their unborn child. This leads him into basically insanity, and he kills the Joker and becomes what is essentially a dictator. In another universe, the same thing is seemingly about to happen, but at the last second, all of the characters are brought into the evil Superman universe to help end his reign. So to break it down, the story mode is basically just a pre-rendered movie broken up by fights, but there are some interaction portions throughout. It's broken up into 12 chapters, each focusing on a different playable character, and sometimes you'll get a QTE scene where you have to match button prompts before a fight. Depending on how well you complete these sequences, both you and your opponent can start the fight already damaged. I personally think the story in this game is really good. In fact, I think the story in this game makes the game worth playing by itself. It's got a lot of neat surprises, and the whole multiverse concept here is actually executed really well, especially when some of the characters in the alternate universe have completely different heroic or villainous alignments. In fact, this story is good enough that they even chose to adapt it into its own animated film. While I haven't personally seen the film yet, I do know that they made some possibly divisive changes though, so I definitely recommend checking out this game solely based on its story mode if you're at all interested, but I'll talk more about that later. So before I move on to the next single player mode, I want to talk about Archives real quick. Archives is a mode where you can unlock a bunch of things using in-game currency called keys and access cards. These things range from EXP boosts to costumes for characters and even online profile customization stuff. There's also an entire character model viewer where you can view not only each character and all of their costumes, with completely unique poses by the way, but even a nice little blurb and ability list. Though these blurbs do seem like they maybe needed to be run through an editor or spell check first. But the real reason I brought up the Archives is because you can use these cards to purchase scenarios for the battles mode. However, I also want to point out that at least in the Ultimate Edition, you can purchase them, but they're also already unlocked? I guess this is because it's the Ultimate Edition, but why are you able to buy them then? Either way, under normal circumstances in the base version of the game, I think you'd have to buy these scenarios in order to use them. Now on to the actual battles mode. The battles mode is what I consider to be this game's unique spin on an arcade mode. Almost every battle has a predefined set of opponents that you fight, but every battle also has its own completely different modifiers. Obviously, you can select classic mode if you want the normal arcade experience, and it also includes animated endings for each character, but you can spice it up a little too. There's a ton of options here, like heroes or villains only, or modes where, I don't know, every hit on an opponent restores your health. There's even a mode where you have to take on 2 opponents per level. There's a shocking amount of variety in this mode, and I really enjoy how this was handled. They could have just, slapped a normal arcade mode into this game and called it a day, but they decided instead to make it something special. The next mode is Star Labs mode. This mode is a series of 300 loose story scenarios, each one with its own 3 mission requirements. The mission requirements can range from special battle modifiers to basic stuff like performing certain moves a specific number of times. Completing a mission gives you a star, and you can earn up to 3 stars per scenario. There's usually dialogue before the fights, but it's not voiced or anything, and a lot of it is just kinda fluff. I'm gonna be honest, this mode isn't really my favorite. It's nice to have all these missions for replay value, but some of the missions can definitely be annoying. If I had to choose, I'd pick the battle mode over Star Labs anytime. So there are multiplayer modes in this game, with local multiplayer and online multiplayer, and while I did try to play an online match, I don't think anyone is still playing this on PC. That, or the servers are just down, I don't know. Speaking of, there is a mobile game, and I'm going to talk about it, but I need to mention it here first. When you first launch this game, you're given the option to link your WB account to access a special New 52 Flash costume, which, by the way, is my favorite costume in this game. Problem is, it looks like whatever server the account linking system uses is just not online anymore. This means that the costume is forever beyond my grasp in this version of the game. I have it on the PS3 version, but I do wish I could access it here. On top of that, playing this game, sometimes you'll level up and unlock stuff for the mobile game. Unfortunately, it doesn't matter for the same reasons I just mentioned. Anyways, that's kind of a small bummer that will forever annoy me, because pretty much everything else is already unlocked in this version of the game. And on a last note, I want to say that the costumes in this game are actually really awesome. There's quite a few of them for each character outside of most of the DLC characters, and some of these costumes even change the character completely. Green Arrow has an Arrowverse Arrow skin, while Green Lantern has a Jon Stewart skin, and both skins even change the voice actor, which is a really nice touch. Oh, and by the way, Scorpion's here. So really, overall, Injustice is a fantastic game. It's a solid, complete package that I could honestly recommend to anyone, not just comic book fans and not just fighting game fans. Even if you're not really a big competitive fighting game player, there's a lot of good single player content to be found here, including the story mode, especially the story mode. For real, it's a really good story. Also, if you like Mortal Kombat but have never given Injustice a shot, a lot of Mortal Kombat DNA is in the gameplay here, so I bet you'd love it if you tried it. Injustice Mobile was released for mobile devices in 2013, so before I even start talking about this game, I need to give credit where it's due. This game came out a very long time ago in the mobile game space, and it's a licensed game. This usually means that the game has been long dead and the servers were shut down forever ago. Injustice, though, still kicking, even when there's a sequel mobile game tie-in out at the same time. Props to the publisher for keeping this one up. It's very rare to see that nowadays. Visually, I mean, this game looks okay, I guess. It's obviously not going to look as good as the base game, especially since this came out relatively early in the AAA mobile game space, but it really does look just fine for what it is. It's kind of like a dumbed-down version of the first Injustice game. Gameplay-wise, yeah. This is, like the visuals, a super dumbed-down version of Injustice. In fact, it doesn't really carry anything over from the game outside of the aesthetics, stages, and characters. The way it works is you select a team of 3 characters from your character collection. Then you go up against other teams of 3 in a few different possible modes. When you start a fight, you can tap the screen to put out basic attacks subsequently, and you can swipe the screen forward and back to perform a heavy attack. Holding 2 fingers on the screen blocks attacks, and when you perform a combo, you have a small window to swipe in a random direction to perform a combo finisher, to stun or knock down the opponent. As you deal out hits, you charge a special meter at the bottom of the screen. The more you charge it, the more powerful the special ability. Well, sort of. I'll explain in a second. Special abilities can actually be charged up for an extra damage percentage by following the on-screen prompts, which are basically just tapping or swiping the screen really fast. At any time, you can swap out characters from your party and bring them into the fight. Doing so can be especially beneficial at times because some characters will have different passive abilities, like Cyborg's ability to regain health while he's tagged out. So back to the special abilities though. For every character, special meter charges are locked behind level progression for each character card. This means that you have to grind with each character to unlock their full ultimate ability. Once you hit the level required to unlock that ability, you then also have to spend in-game currency to upgrade the ability, which means even more grinding. Honestly, this gameplay just didn't click for me. While I'm sure there are people out there that like this kind of gameplay, I feel like removing basically all player agency is not the best move, and it feels like a huge downgrade from the original game. Obviously, they wanted a mobile tie-in here and had to adapt it somehow. It just feels like they could have done it differently, I guess. I mean, just movement options would have been nice, but hey, that's just my opinion. So, of course, as this is a free mobile game, we're gonna have monetization strategies, and there's 3 distinct ones I'll talk about in this game. The first is an energy system, which, I mean, we all know how energy systems work. Starting fights uses up energy, and you can either wait for it to recharge, or you can pay real money to recharge it instantly. I will say, though, that I never ran ran out of energy playing this, but your mileage may vary. The second monetization strategy is the game's upgrade system. It looks like there's a couple of ways to upgrade individual character cards using different in-game currencies, and of course you can supplement this and do it even faster by just spending some cash. The final and most prominent monetization in this game though is the booster packs. In this game, your characters are represented by cards, and you can buy booster packs with character cards in them. There's standard random grab bag packs, and there's also themed packs like Red Sun and even a Suicide Squad film pack. This is probably where most of the revenue from this game comes from, and it feels especially loot boxy. Obviously, people who enjoy the gameplay are gonna want their favorite characters, so I imagine this game has probably made tons of money over the years. Plus, there's a bunch of costumes here that don't seem to be in the standard game, and oh boy, I will get into that, just not yet. At the end of the day, this game doesn't even really come close to feeling like a substitute for the actual Injustice game, outside of the visual style and sound design. I don't really see a reason to play this nowadays, and maybe it was novel at the time of its release, but that novelty has definitely worn off, at least for me. I wouldn't waste my time with this one unless you're just super curious. Injustice Arcade is an arcade-only adaptation of the mobile game. In this version, rather than unlocking character cards through purchases, here you get a card simply by buying a play of the game. In fact, you can actually just skip the game entirely and just pay to get a card. While I wish I could go into the ins and outs of everything here, this actually plays nearly identically to the mobile game. The main difference here is that it just uses physical controls, and you set up your team using physical cards. Otherwise, you're basically getting the same experience as the mobile game, just on a bigger screen with a little bit better graphics. There's also the option to play it with a second player next to you in the arcade. Would I recommend this version of the game? Well, I'd say that depends on the kind of person you are. If you go to arcades looking for fun and nothing else, I couldn't really recommend it. If you're the kind of person who likes collecting things, then absolutely. And actually collecting these cards is kind of addicting, and the cards themselves have different rarities, which gives you an incentive to keep collecting. In fact, I'd argue that collecting the cards is more fun than the game itself. Take that how you will. And the cards, by the way, are pretty nice and pretty good quality. They feel like a standard trading card. At the end of the day though, this feels more like a gimmick than anything to me, and unfortunately these cards will likely become unusable when the game inevitably leaves most arcades someday. Injustice 2 was released in 2017. Visually, this definitely looks better than the first game, at least in visual fidelity and complexity. Of course, it was built for better hardware, so there's no surprises there. The art style, however, is carried over for the most part, and it still looks excellent. I do have one minor complaint though, and that's that the proportions of the characters feel a bit too bulky, I guess. Obviously, this is entirely my opinion, and some people may not even see a difference like I do, and after a while I did get used to it, and I just liked the less realistic proportions of the first game. One thing I couldn't get used to though was the way they made the designs for Harley Quinn and Joker. The game came out around the same time as the Suicide Squad movie, and it feels almost like the developer was contractually obligated, I guess, to make Harley look like Margot Robbie and the Joker to look young? I don't know. It doesn't really make any sense. Like, I kinda get the Harley Quinn thing. This game has way more realistic faces, and they might as well make the character look like a person who's portraying the character on the big screen, but what's up with the Joker here? He doesn't look like Jared Leto, but he also doesn't really look like the Joker? I have no idea why they changed his design in this way, and I'm not really a fan of it. Otherwise though, I do like how this game looks overall. While I'm on the visuals, the presentation here is a massive upgrade. The menus are a lot more interactive, with the title screen having Batman at a control panel with a dynamic zoom element when you choose a mode. The in-game UI is also way clearer with its messaging and information. And of course, the ultimate scenes are back, and they are great. In fact, I'd even say that they're a step up from the first games. Everybody has brand new animations, and I don't feel like any characters had any less effort put into their scenes this time. And while the scenes do still get old after the 600th time, they're still undeniably awesome. I do have one nitpick though. This game runs at a buttery smooth, consistent high FPS, but during any ultimate move or story cutscene, it clearly drops down to 30. Why this happens, I have no idea, but it can be pretty jarring, especially when ultimate moves can come out multiple times per fight. This leads to me having to adjust my brain to the new frame rate over and over multiple times per match. It can get kind of mentally exhausting if I'm being honest. I know this kind of thing doesn't affect some people as much, but it heavily affects others, and I do wonder why they chose this approach to the scenes. Gameplay-wise, this feels incredibly similar to the first game in battles, and that's because, for all intents and purposes, it is exactly the same. The base systems are the same, including controls and the clash wager system. They did did add a new mechanic called air escapes, which allows you to use some of your ultimate meter to escape an air combo. While all of the characters that were brought over from the first game do have some adjustments and changes, there's quite a few moves here and entire characters that feel like they control exactly the same. Of course, this isn't a bad thing at all, because this is a situation where if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But you may have noticed that I said in battles, and that's because this game has a brand new core mechanic in its gear system. There is now a new dedicated mode where you can equip unlockable gear that not only changes the appearance of the characters, but their stats too. There's a few different categories of gear, including headgear, arms, legs, and weapons. This gear is all themed in different sets, meaning that completing a set will give you an overall consistent thematic look. But there's also outright premier skins that completely change your look and can also change the character's voice. This gear is unlocked by playing various modes and opening loot boxes. I'll get to that. I feel kind of mixed overall on this gear system though for a couple of reasons. First, I thought just outright unlocking alternate costumes in the first game was rewarding enough, and being able to just choose an extra costume was nice. Yeah, you can save sets in this game, but it's tied to stats and kind of feels like Soul Calibur 4 in that regard. Definitely check out my Soul Calibur video. I'll probably remake it soon. But the other thing that I don't like so much is that these costumes actually feel like a step down in some regards, though there are still a couple that outshine the rest, like this Batman skin that is literally just Bruce Wayne in a suit, or Raiden switching out entirely to Black Lightning. Oh, and for the record, all of this gear is level locked, meaning that you have to be the same level minimum as the piece of gear, which means hooray, more grinding every individual character. One thing I really do enjoy about this system though is the way that it enabled the TMNT DLC character to work. TMNT meaning Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, of course. You see, the character is called TMNT, but on the character select it defaults to Leonardo. However, if you change his weapon, it changes the character that you use. And because this game allows you to save gear setups, you can switch between them at any time on the character select as long as you have them saved to a customization slot. Obviously, they could have just had the characters as selectable skins for one character, but I do think that the way that it's handled is pretty creative. So, in order for a loot box system to work, there has to be a way to earn those loot boxes. One of the main modes in this game, and probably the main mode once you finish the story, is the multiverse mode. In this mode, you take on what appears to be endless challenges which have different requirements and difficulties, and they give you rewards in the form of in-game currency, loot boxes, and random character gear. I'll be honest, the mode does give out more than I expected, but it still feels like the point is to have to grind a ton in order to unlock stuff that you really want. The challenges are presented as selectable universes in the multiverse, and each one has a short scenario description along with an optional mission requirement and modifier, like one mission where hearts would randomly appear on the stage to heal whoever picked them up. There's a secondary multiverse mode called Legendary Multiverse, and while it's presented in a similar way, these challenges seem to be fixed and broken up by character, and these also have pretty high level requirements. They remind me actually a lot of the Super Smash Bros. Ultimate DLC Spirit Battles. So next I want to talk about the story mode. The story mode is, again, basically just a movie interspersed with fights, but this time there's a few big changes. First, the production value is stupid higher, just so much higher. The scenes have so much more going on, and it really feels like a much grander scale story. However, the QTEs have been removed, and instead there's now a new system where for some chapters you actually have a choice between two characters, and they give you multiple opportunities to choose. This also changes up the dialogue and how the scenes play out, and this mechanic is even used in the ending to decide which ending you want. While I won't spoil everything here, the story in this game is set entirely in the evil Superman universe after the end of the last game, and the main villain is Brainiac. I highly recommend playing this story if you can, because it is excellent, just like the first game's story. And while I do think it's a tiny step down and doesn't have as much of a mystique as the first game's story, the highs are still really high here. Oh, and this game has a ton of character-specific interactions in and out of the story. In fact, it feels like almost every single character has an interaction with every single other character. Even the DLC characters have character-specific dialogue with basically everyone, and these are probably some of the best and most in-depth interactions I've seen in a fighting game. There's even callbacks to Mortal Kombat vs. DC Universe.
You're leaving Earth now.
We were allies on Apocalypse, Superman. Here, we're not. Begin.
It's really giving Dragon Ball FighterZ a run for its money. Alright, so listen, I did try to play this game online, but apparently no one was playing this game on PC, so I was unfortunately unable to play any online matches on PC. So instead, I decided to use Xbox's weird streaming thing to stream the Xbox One version of the game to my browser, where I instantly found an online match. Now let me tell you a story about why this was a mistake. You see, I think this was a fairly even fight under normal circumstances. I think Last King 2021 and I were both at about the same skill level. But here's the problem. When I streamed this game using xCloud, I got a ridiculous amount of input lag. I'm talking at least half a second in the menus. I have no idea what kind of lag the actual battle introduced on top of that input lag, but I think I did a decent job given the circumstances. So while I think I did a decent job given the circumstances, I still lost. You thought I was gonna say I lost, huh? You really think I'd risk playing a game like this online on a normal, average day? Using my vast network of planners, analysts, and engineers, I created a system that allows me to pinpoint exactly which days are opposite day. And I am happy to report, my friends, that while the game says I lost, I played this match on opposite day. Sorry, Last King 2021, but that victory was just an illusion. So my overall thoughts on Injustice 2. I feel like this game is kind of a lateral move from the first game. It doesn't necessarily elevate the core gameplay, but that also isn't a bad thing at all. It still feels really good to play, and if they make an Injustice 3 and the gameplay is still the same, I won't even be mad and I'll probably buy it. However, I do personally believe the gear system can be improved. Unlockable costumes are cool, but I'm less enthusiastic about unlocking costumes piece by piece with loot boxes, if that makes any sense. I don't have any ideas how they could replace the system off the top of my head, but I'm sure the next game will try something new and innovative anyways. Injustice 2 Mobile was released for mobile devices in 2007. This game is a mobile adaptation of the console game, and like the previous mobile adaptation, has an incredibly similar visual style to the game it's based on, just with less fidelity. Where this game differs from the last mobile game though, is that it's actually a lot more hands-on and a little bit more fun to play in its gameplay. You still make teams of 3 character cards, you still tap the screen to attack, but they've made it so every character has 2 special moves on a timer, and ultimate moves are available right off the bat. Additionally, you can swipe forward, backward, up, and down to pull off directional attacks and movement, which instantly makes this game feel leagues better in my opinion. While it's still very dumbed down from the primary version, this is a huge improvement over the first mobile game. They also managed to include the gear system here, though it doesn't look like the gear affects the look of the characters. Unlocking characters in this game is done by collecting shards that represent the character, and you do this over the course of specific missions or modes. When you collect enough shards, you can claim that character. Of course, if you want the fancy characters, you can shell out premium currency to do a gacha pull and attempt to get all their shards at the same time. I'm incredibly sad to report that while I did spend a ridiculous amount of time trying to get the coveted Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson Black Adam skin, I was unable to pull it off. I'm sorry for letting you all down and being unable to truly smell what The Rock is cooking. So the modes in this game include a main campaign mode where you play battle after battle to level up characters and unlock gear, an interactive online mode called Arena, a story mode, and a handful of other smaller modes with online interactivity. About the story mode though, they actually did manage to port all of the story cutscenes into this game. It has the exact same story with almost exactly the same presentation as the main console game, just with the mobile game's gameplay style. This is honestly really cool and impressed me quite a bit. Unfortunately, if you're a new player to the mobile game, you can only play so far before you get locked out of continuing without increasing your account level. On top of that, it looks like the story only reaches up to around 3/4 of the way through, and at this point in time, it doesn't look like they plan on adding in the rest. That being said, if you do want to experience the story in kind of a roundabout way for free, I guess this is a valid way to do it. You just have to watch the rest of the scenes online. There's another mode here called Arena that's presented like it's online, but I think these are just AI versions of other actual players. I tried a few rounds, and while it did feel like these were real usernames, it didn't feel like these were real people. So listen, I could go into more detail about this game's modes, systems, etc., but I want to talk about the character skins. This game has a pretty nice variety of skins for the primary cast, including a bunch of really cool crossover skins from stuff like the Arrowverse, Batman, Ninja, and more. But here's the thing, why aren't skins like this in the normal game? These skins are really cool. Playing this game actually bummed me out because, I mean, look at this. Isn't this a sick skin? This could have been in the main game. I would have grinded the hell out of this skin to unlock it if it was available in the main game. That was unfortunately my main takeaway from this game, actually. I obviously understand that they couldn't indefinitely make new skins skins for the main game, but I still can't help but feel frustrated that the coolest possible skins were relegated to the mobile spin-off, you know? Before I move on from talking about this game, I also want to point out, there seems to be some kind of game-breaking bug with account linking that makes this game simply not launch on some devices. I know this because I ran into the problem and almost had to completely skip this game for this video. While I normally wouldn't point something like this out, this seems to be actually a more widespread problem, and it looks like this problem has existed since the game launched and has somehow never been fixed even to this day. It's also relevant to me because that's 2 for 2 on me failing to link my account to these mobile games for bonus content in the main game. Anyways, this game as a whole is a massive improvement over the first Injustice mobile game. This one gives the player way more control, and just that small change makes it so much more enjoyable to play. Sure, there's still a grind, but it's a free-to-play mobile game, so I'm not really surprised. It's really neat that there's a full adapted story mode here too, and I think that alone makes this game worth at least giving a shot if you're on the fence. Still mad about those skins though. And that's it for every Injustice game. My overall thoughts on this series are that if you're going to get into it and care at all about the story, you should definitely play the first and second games. However, if you're here just for some fun DC fighting game time, play Injustice 2. Also, there's something that I didn't mention but I wanted to talk about really fast. The music in these games is so good. There's a recurring main theme that plays and has a ton of variations, but even then there's just so many good tracks. I don't really know how to describe music in a video without just playing it or understanding music theory, but check out the soundtrack for these games, or better yet, play these games and listen to the soundtrack. It's really good. Also, I know I play a lot of fighting games on this channel, and I know I'm not the best at fighting games. That being said, these games felt really good to play for someone like me who is actively not good at fighting games. While you probably wouldn't enjoy playing them online or anything, if you're the kind of person who isn't a big fighting game person but still enjoys DC, you would probably enjoy this game too. Anyways, that's all for this video. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking it, and if you like content like this in general, definitely consider subscribing too. I've got a lot of really awesome plans for 2023, and I can't wait to share it with you all. Alright, thanks for watching and have a fantastic day.